Hey, it is Thursday, and so I wanted to come on and show you what I'm working on and do another tutorial for you. This time I am hand stitching binding. The last time I showed you how I will sometimes do machine binding for kind of quicker finishes, or if I have a binding that matches the border, the outside. But today I'm finishing up a quilt that's an exciting quilt for me because it is my next pattern to be released. I'm hoping to release it on Monday, and it is my first pattern for a larger quilt. So that's super exciting. Anyway, so goodness, sorry. Yeah, so I'm gonna flip this around and kind of show you what I've done here, and show you exactly how I hand stitch binding. So if you come on late, or if you have any questions while I'm doing this, stay high. I'll still be able to see this side of the camera, so I can respond to you and all of that stuff. And if you watch on the replay, that's cool too. Make sure and just leave your questions and stuff. I love to come back through and answer your questions and even just say hello. So I feel like I've got a little frog in my throat today. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to flip you around and show you. Here's my quilt. Get you. Make sure we're at a good angle here. Excuse me again. Okay, so unlike when I do the machine binding, when I did the machine binding, I took my binding and I sewed it onto the back of the quilt, and then I pulled it over, and then I stitched it down on top. When I hand stitch, I stitch it to the top of the quilt, and then I fold it over, and then I'm going to hand stitch it to the back. So where I have it so far is I've got the binding attached to the front, and then as I fold it over, I put pins in place along the way to help. It's just easier to help it keep in place for the sewing. So I have a long strip here. I've got my thread or my needle, and I have done double thread. So I use the thread, I thread the needle with it, I pull it all the way down to where I have a double strand, and I do a little knot at the end. And so that's how I start it. Okay, I like to use the double just because it adds a little extra strength to it. And I'm using a, I think it's a Guterman's from Joann's, in kind of a similar shade of blue. It's not exact, but I think it'll be close enough that it won't stand out with too much contrast. So I typically try to match the binding and not the backing with the thread when I hand stitch. So here's my starting place. I usually try to start near a corner. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to go at like a horizontal, and I want to go back. I'm going to be sewing this way, but I want to hide the knot on the thread. So I'm going to start by going this way. And to do that, I go up under the fold, under here, and I'm going to try to I'm going to bring it forward to where I come out kind of along the base of the fold, or the bottom of the fold. So I go underneath the fold and I try to come out at the bottom of the fold. And then I just pull that through. And I'm going to tuck that little knot up underneath so that it can't be seen. And now I'm going to go straight down from where my stitch came out. I'm going to go straight down into the quilt right below it. And I only want to get like the layer of the backing, and maybe, I mean, it's okay if I get a little bit of batting in it, but the idea is that I want to make sure that I don't go all the way to the front. And so I go down directly below where the thread comes out of the fold. Got to move it so I can see it. And then I'm just going to come over a very short distance away and come out through the bottom of the fold of the binding. I'm doing this at an angle and I'm having a hard time seeing it. Sorry, because middle age. Okay, there we go. So see, it's through, come straight down through the backing, and then when I come up at an angle, I'm coming through and ending up in the binding. Then I'm going to do you guys ever sew anything and when you first start and your thread's really long, it always wants to knot and it wants to wrap itself around everything? Like I have to keep getting it off of the tripod because it wants to hang on to it. This always happens when I start off with new thread. Okay. So that is one stitch. Just one second here. Make sure my thread doesn't knot. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can hold it. I've seen people hold it like kind of like this and go in it at the side. I used to hold it mostly like this. Oh, there's my 4-year-old screaming. And when you do that, it's just kind of holding it straight and going across. The bane of long thread again. But my favorite way to hold it is I like to wrap it across my finger and I hold it like this. So I can go in, I just feel like I have more control over it, and having the little bit of stability with my finger there makes it hold well. Now the thread is caught on my tripod. And take this pin out. And let me get you over to the corner and I'll show you how I deal with the corners. Sit up to it a little bit closer so I can see and go a little faster. This usually is a pretty quick process for me. I mean, hand stitching is always relatively, it's going to be slower than using a machine, obviously, but my goodness, this thread is just determined to give me a tough time on this stream today. If you know any tips on how to keep that from happening, I would love to hear them, because it's obnoxious. And now we have another knot, but this all, yeah, I always struggle when I put the new thread on. got a stitch without it giving me trouble. And now it broke. Okay, 1 second. So, okay, so stuff like this happens sometimes. I got a little knot in it, and so I have this bit that's hanging down because the thread broke. So what I'm going to do is cut the end. Let me grab my scissors here. I'm glad you guys still hang out with me even though I'm awkward. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to straight up cut that up close, and then I'm going to go back and start earlier. So I just cut that off where it was close to the binding. And that's not how I would finish that or end new binding or new stitches early. It's not how I would typically end binding or end the stitching, because we want it to be secure. But I'm going to cut this thread a little shorter. I will rethread it. Pull it down. And then at the end, I'm sure that there are all sorts of ways to make little knots. This is how I do it. I line the ends up together. I pinch it, wrap it around my finger like that. Then I just roll it off and pull it tight. And then I get a little knot. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back. Here's where that little part is hanging off. I'm going to go back under, and I'm going to go back to where the second stitch is from where the thread broke. And I'm going to try to come out at that same place or very near it. I'll tuck the knot up in behind that stitch that's in between. And hide it. And then I'm going to try to double that other stitch to keep it secure. There, hope that makes sense. And now, since I have shorter thread, I shouldn't have so many issues with it. So I come along. I love to do this. It's actually quite relaxing to put on a game or a movie, something like that, and sit and stitch while watching TV or something like that. Something that doesn't require a lot of hands and that you can pay partial attention to. I also really like audiobooks. I don't know if I've told you that, guys, that before. Oftentimes when I am sewing, I listen to audiobooks. And I just use Audible. And right now, I'm listening to the Sword of Truth series by Terry Goodkind. Okay, so this is the last stitch to get to the corner. And so what I did here is I went down and I tried to come out in the fold that's going to turn to the other side, in the corner fold. And I like to do that because then I can make sure that my fold goes where I want it to go. So I try to come out on this part of the fold. And now I'm going to place that where I have a nice little miter, and I'm going to go down through where the fold is and come out the other side, coming down on the other side. Then I just wrap it back around my finger and keep on going. Now, when I do get to a proper stop without my thread breaking or needing to cut it randomly, what I do to end and secure the thread is when I get to a spot, I'm going to go down underneath where I have the same stitch, but instead of going at it and coming out, you know, further down the line, I'm going to try to come out at the exact same place. Like this. Can you see that? Where it's coming out and I'm trying to come into the same place. Then I pull that through, and before it gets all the way pulled through, I'm going to put my needle through the loop. Make the camera go in the right place there. And then pull it tight, and it makes a little knot here. Then I will make another little knot, do the exact same thing, go through the loop, pull it tight, and then to cut the thread, I don't cut it there. I go back underneath that where that knot is, and I come out through the binding somewhere up close up here. It's a little bit away, and then I cut it up against the binding there. And that way that loose end is tucked up behind stitches that I've already done and is not going to be hanging down here or being fuzzy or anything like that. So that's it for today. Let me bring you around up here. Hey, there you are. So that's how I do my hand stitching. I should probably use shorter thread more often and just change it more often because it does give me a heck of a time. But anyway, thanks for joining me today. And like I said and say every time, those of you who come through and watch the replay, make sure you ask your questions or say hello below, and I will come through and have a chat with you. But yeah, thanks for all your support and everything, and I can't wait to show you this quilt when it is all the way done. It's called Around the Neighborhood, and I hope you guys love it. So anyway, I will catch you next time. Bye!